What are we going to do about the New Year's party? I can't help it with this body condition. Hearing this, my husband widened his eyes in anger. Don't joke around. We're going to invite all the relatives and celebrate grandly. Entertaining with drinks and food is your job. He stated harshly without considering my feelings. All right, I understand. Who do you think caused the accident? I suppressed my own words and responded like that. At that moment, I resolved to punish my husband. On the day of the New Year's party, my husband seemed to have left home early in the morning. He returned about 10 minutes before the party was due to start, humming a tune and saying, "I guess I've got to play the good husband," as he entered the house. What's this all about? I took the opportunity to greet everyone instead of my surprised husband. Everyone. The man who ruined my life has just arrived. My name is Kelly, a 45-year-old housewife. I've been married to Steve for 12 years. We met at a mixer where he was the one who approached me actively, which led us to grow closer and eventually start dating. His outgoing personality pulled me along, and our relationship went smoothly, leading to our marriage about 1.5 years after we started dating. I was delighted when we decided to get married. I thought life with him, always cheerful and manly, would be fun. However, he had a hobby I didn't know about: gambling. He frequently went to casinos when not with me, a habit he started as a student and couldn't quit, even using it as a stress reliever after becoming a working adult. Sometimes he won big, which kept him hooked, though he was likely just breaking even overall. I wanted him to quit, but since it hadn't yet affected our family finances, I reluctantly tolerated it. However, things changed when I got pregnant shortly after our marriage, and became a stay-at-home mom after our child was born. Since I couldn't work and depended on his income, I desperately asked him to cut back on gambling. "Hey, now that we have a child, could you stop going to the casino?" When I said that, Steve visibly made a face of displeasure. "What? Why should I stop? Gambling is my reason to work hard. But you're supporting our family of 3 now. I don't want our living expenses to vanish because of gambling." "Don't worry, I won't go into the negatives. I'm saying I want the money you spend on gambling to go towards raising our child and living expenses." "What a pain. Then you should work too." "Really? I can work? If you're going to complain, then earn the living expenses yourself. Then I'll work." Although he had wanted me to stay home after marriage, revisiting that was pointless now. If I could make up for it by working, that was better. I quickly found a job in an office, working from morning till 5 p.m., 5 days a week. That should at least cover living expenses while saving for our son's future education. Balancing housework, child-rearing, and work was tough, but I was determined. Given his behavior, I couldn't have high expectations of him. Plus, I actually enjoyed working. It connected me to society and broadened my perspectives through interactions with diverse colleagues. "Kelly is really meticulous at work. You're so reliable. I'd like you to become a full-time employee." I was pleased to hear that, though becoming full-time would impact childcare and housework since our child was still young. I expressed this difficulty but also my willingness to increase work hours in the future if possible. Being appreciated at work was truly gratifying, especially since my husband's mood swings at home, all due to gambling, were challenging. When he won, he was cheerful, even towards our son and me. But when he lost, he returned home in a foul mood, occasionally yelling at our son for just running around, which was very troubling. These frequent disputes made me desperately wish he would quit gambling. I even discussed this issue with his parents, who apologized with troubled expressions. "Maybe it's because there are casinos near your house." That could indeed be tempting. "How about moving in here?" "Here, with you? Does that mean we would be living together?" As I expressed confusion over the sudden proposal, his parents quickly explained. "Actually, we've been thinking of retiring to the countryside. Really? You know my brother is a farmer, right? We're both interested in farm work, so we decided to move there to help him. I see. That's why we were thinking about what to do with this house. You're still renting, right? From here, you can still commute to work, and since it's a residential area with no casinos, the chances of gambling will decrease. And you won't have to pay rent, which isn't a bad deal. Their proposal was very welcome. The family home was old but spacious and comfortable, suitable for our son to run around without noise concerns. And if it could slightly improve my husband's gambling habit, that would be a great relief. I asked my in-laws to speak directly to my husband about their proposal, fearing his pride might interfere if I brought it up first. As expected, when his parents suggested moving back home, he happily agreed. We'll be living at my parents' house from now on. What? Start preparing for the move. Steve told me about the decision to move in with his parents only after everything had been arranged. Although it was fine this time since his parents had informed me beforehand, I worried about future instances where he might only report important matters to me after the fact. This selfishness of his was becoming apparent, and I disliked it. Afterward, we moved into his parents' home. It was more comfortable than I had anticipated, and the house was very livable. Our son ran around joyfully both inside the house and in the garden. Interestingly, Steve also started coming home earlier. There were no casinos near his workplace or our home, so without anything else to do, he came home sooner. I was thankful for his parents' suggestion. It seemed to reduce Steve's wasteful spending, and combined with my salary, our finances improved significantly. However, about 6 months after moving into his parents' house, I noticed that the money Steve brought home had decreased. I observed the situation for a while, and the following month it had decreased again. It was strange for it to continue decreasing. One night, as I was about to go to bed, I noticed that the light was still on in Steve's room. I knocked and called out to see if he wasn't asleep yet, but there was no response. After several knocks and calls with no answer, I worried he might have fallen asleep or, worse, collapsed. Concerned, I opened the door. And there he was, asleep with his head down on the desk. You'll catch a cold sleeping here. I tried to wake him up. However, he didn't wake up easily. At that moment, I noticed the computer screen still on. It displayed lose with what looked like a casino background. Could it be? I moved the mouse and clicked. A poker game appeared. It was just a game, right? Upon checking the site, I found it was a pay-to-play online casino. So, instead of going to the casino, Steve had been gambling online. I felt as if I had been hit on the head with a blunt object. The recent decrease in the money brought home was likely because he had been spending it on this online casino. When I heard my husband waking up, I spoke to him. You fell asleep, didn't you? Huh? What are you doing entering my room without permission? He retorted, annoyed despite having fallen asleep there. Not wanting to argue, I said, all right, just go sleep in the bedroom, and left his room. Could it be possible for him to overcome his addiction to gambling? I was very worried. Amid these concerns, Steve surprisingly invited me on a one-night, 2-day trip for our wedding anniversary. It turned out his boss had given him a voucher for a tourist hotel because his wife had contracted influenza. They had planned to cancel, but doing so would incur a cancellation fee. So his boss decided to pass it on to Steve instead. Our son can stay with my parents, and we'll go just the two of us. Yeah, that's fine. Steve seemed very excited about the trip. Apparently, there was a ski resort near the hotel, and he wanted to ski. He had always enjoyed skiing and was happy to do it again after a long time. I also liked winter sports, and since it had been a while since we traveled as a couple, I was pleased. However, at that time, I had no idea what would happen next. After busy days, the day of the ski trip arrived. It was a sunny day, perfect for skiing. The snow conditions and the scenery on the mountain were fantastic. When we reached the top by lift, the view was spectacular. Wow, it's amazing. Yeah, the view is great. I can't wait to ski. Steve was very antsy, almost like a child, while I also looked forward to enjoying skiing. However, once we got off the lift, Steve left me behind and skied down smoothly. He was so fast that I couldn't keep up at all. He skied down elegantly without seeming to care about leaving me behind. The course was challenging, and others watched his movements with admiration. He must have been pleased to attract attention. After finishing, Steve had a satisfied look on his face. All right, let's go up again. Huh, you're going already? What are you talking about? We came here to ski as much as we can. He replied and got on the lift. I hurriedly joined him, but once we reached the top, he left me behind again and went ahead. Before I knew it, he was already at the bottom, and I was just skiing alone. Then I saw Steve skiing slowly ahead. Maybe he was waiting for me? I thought. But it turned out he was only slow because he couldn't get past a group of skiers. It seemed he wasn't willing to maneuver through that group. I was about to catch up with him, thinking we could ski together, when suddenly, he changed direction and headed towards an area marked with yellow lines, an off-limits area. Hey, what are you doing? That area is off-limits. I tried desperately to stop him, calling out as loudly as I could so he could hear. But Steve didn't listen. As I kept calling out to him, I realized I had stepped into the restricted area with one foot. In the next moment, I felt as if my foot wasn't touching the ground. I tumbled down the slope and lost consciousness. I didn't know how long I was unconscious. Surrounded by darkness, hearing a beeping sound. Where am I? I thought as I woke up. A white ceiling and the mechanical sounds were louder now. Memories slowly returned. I had fallen into the restricted area calling out Steve's name. It seemed I had miraculously survived. I felt no pain, possibly under full anesthesia, and no sensation at all. I tried my best to look around, but sensed no one near. What happened to Steve? The absence of his presence meant, could it be, he was? I was seized by intense anxiety. I spotted a nurse call button nearby and pressed it immediately. A nurse arrived, smiled gently upon confirming I was conscious, and asked, "How are you feeling?" I honestly reported my lack of sensation in my legs. The nurse's face clouded over, and she went to call a doctor, who returned with shocking news. It appeared I had landed badly, resulting in a state of paraplegia, forcing me into a wheelchair-bound life. I couldn't believe I was in such a condition. It felt surreal even as the doctor informed me. Am I really paralyzed? Both the doctor and nurse nodded solemnly. I asked for some time alone, overwhelmed, and then lay staring at the ceiling in the empty hospital room. I eventually fell asleep, and when I awoke, Steve was standing there. Steve, are you all right? What are you doing? What? I can ski well, even in that area. Why were you trying to ski there with me? I wasn't trying to ski there. I was trying to call you back, and I ended up entering that area. That's just terrible. You'll be in the hospital for a while, right? Who's going to do the housework and take care of the kids? Don't mess around. What? I was stunned by my husband's attitude. Normally, one would expect a husband to be concerned about his wife's condition. But instead, he said such things. He had been asked by the doctor to bring my clothes, but he carelessly placed them on a chair and left. Even though my parents and his had visited me, my husband had not come. After finishing my hospital stay, I returned home in a wheelchair. My parents came by car to pick me up and take me home. During my hospitalization, they had also taken care of our son. I was happy to see my son's face after such a long time. "Mom," he said as he came up to me, I'm sorry you had to be alone. After we got into the car, I sat next to my son, holding his hand and talking. At some point, I was struck by the scenery visible from the window. It was the end of the year by the time I was discharged. And everywhere was bustling with year-end sales. Normally, I would have eagerly joined the crowds, but now that I was in a wheelchair, I could no longer do that. Knowing this fact made me very sad. When we arrived home, my father helped push my wheelchair. Our house wasn't accessible, and even small steps I had never noticed before felt like huge barriers. My father struggled to push the wheelchair, but we managed to get inside. I had been doing intensive rehabilitation, and my legs had started to move slightly, so I could walk a little. Steve was not at home. It was the day of my discharge, and he hadn't come to pick me up or been at home. Maybe I no longer mattered to him. After a while, Steve came back, holding what appeared to be prizes from casinos. Ah. Mother, father, were you here? You went to the casino, even though it was the day my daughter was discharged from the hospital? I'm sorry, I got the dates mixed up. I heard you didn't visit even once. I've been busy with work. My parents sighed and said to me, "We're going to leave now," then left the house. Without them, I wouldn't have had anyone to take care of my son, or a way to get home after being discharged. I really appreciate my parents. Then, facing my husband, I felt a surge of anger. How can you go to a casino when I'm suffering like this? You're really the worst. To be that addicted to gambling, I think it's like a disease. Be quiet, you're the one who got a needless injury and skived off the housework. The hospital bills were expensive, it's really the worst. Besides, you've forgotten about that, haven't you? What are you talking about? The New Year's party. We host it every year, remember? The New Year's party is always held at his parents' house. But since we began living in this house, it has also been held here. During the New Year's party, his parents would come from the countryside, and my mother-in-law and I would prepare the food and host the gathering. What are we going to do about the New Year's party? I can't help it with this body condition. Hearing this, Steve widened his eyes in anger. Don't joke around. We're going to invite all the relatives and celebrate grandly. Entertaining with drinks and food is your job, he stated harshly without considering my feelings. All right, I understand. Who do you think caused the accident? I suppressed my own words and responded like that. At that moment, I resolved to punish my husband. On the day of the New Year's party, my husband seemed to have left home early in the morning. He returned about 10 minutes before the party was due to start, humming a tune and saying, "I guess I've got to play the good husband," as he entered the house. However, he was surprised to find that all the relatives were already in the living room and the party had started. What's this all about? I took the opportunity to greet everyone instead of my surprised husband. Everyone. The man who ruined my life has just arrived. The relatives looked at Steve with cold eyes. Hey, Kelly, what's this all about? The start time is in 10 minutes, right? And ruined your life, what are you talking about? It means exactly what I said, you are the reason I suffered such a serious injury. I contacted everyone and had them come an hour earlier today. I assumed you would go to the casino again and come back just in time. What? I didn't go to the casino. Lying is pointless. You're even holding a casino prize in your hand today. In the next moment, his parents and all the relatives criticized my husband. What kind of husband are you, causing your wife such serious injuries? And dumping all the housework and party preparations on her? And to think you were gambling at a casino during all this time, it's despicable. You fail as a human being. Steve turned pale as everyone berated him. The relatives and his own parents already knew about the ski trip incident from me. No one took Steve's side. His parents stepped forward and slapped him hard across the face. You're no child of ours. Leave this place, it's displeasing to have you here. But this is my. Just get out. Startled by his father's angry shout, Steve hastily left the house. Comforted by the relatives, I enjoyed the party with everyone. Later, a discussion about divorce was held with both my parents and his parents present. Steve was reluctant to divorce, but with the support of both parents, we were able to go through with it smoothly. This incident was also reported to Steve's workplace. Soon, he received cold stares at his company, made repeated mistakes, and was demoted to a trivial branch office. Meanwhile, I returned to my parents' home with my son. With their support, I diligently continued my rehabilitation. I was determined not to let my life be miserable because of my ex-husband. Miraculously, I began to walk again. Of course, I wasn't ready to go out to work, so I just walked around the house slowly. Still, being able to move freely again was a great joy. And I was fortunate with work as well. The company I had worked for part-time offered me a working-from-home position, which I eagerly accepted. Now, working from home, surrounded by my supportive parents and my son's cheerful presence, I felt truly happy. As for my ex-husband, he continued to struggle with his gambling addiction. Unable to quit gambling and accumulating debt to relieve stress. Abandoned by his own parents, he had no one to turn to. And his debts continued to grow. It might lead to serious trouble. But that was no longer my concern, he had made his bed. Meanwhile, I worked hard from home, achieving good results. I spent each day happily and peacefully with my parents and son, feeling very content. Going forward, I plan to keep working hard on my rehabilitation and live life with hope for the future.